What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. So we're taking a look at Final Fantasy VII Rebirth here on the Lenovo Legion Go, and we've been looking at this on all the devices on the channel, and all in all, this game doesn't run near as good as I expected the port to on any device, including my more powerful PCs. I think some patches are in order for sure, but either way, we're going to get into it and take a look at some performance here for the Z1 Extreme on the Lenovo Legion Go. So let's start off with some settings and get into it. Alright, so we'll get into the settings here, and you pretty much do need to run things low. Now, you don't have any 1610 support or support for 1200p or 800p, even though I do have the device set to those resolutions, so we're more going to be testing it at 1080 and 720. We're also going to be using low with a dynamic resolution scaling of 66% as the low with TAA, U, and medium textures. That's pretty much the settings I'll be using for all of my handhelds to get as much performance as I can, but even at that, whether I just run a straight 1080p docked or 1200p on the device while the game's running 1080, I get the same performance that just really isn't very playable at this resolution. So we can even up our wattage to 30 in handheld mode, and we're only going to gain a couple of FPS. The only place this really helps us is where we get into some battles in areas where CPU gets a little heavier and it uses that power and does a little better job, but overall doesn't really help in performance. 25 watts is a good sweet spot that I'm going to stick with for the video and what I've been playing this game at here and on my Ally X. Runs pretty well on the Claw at 30 watts, some at 17 as well, but all the devices suffer when it comes to the higher resolution here and trying to lower the wattage. So let's go ahead and get into a little bit more gameplay. I also want to take a look at medium settings to show you that that can get rough. I know some of you are probably trying to run this at medium, but even at 720p, it goes under 30 FPS consistently. So let's go ahead and bump up the settings real quick. We'll look at medium and then we'll come back to these low with medium textures. So we'll bump this up here and the game is of course going to look better, but we're going to lose even more FPS. And if you get into other areas of the game where you get into battle or into a city, like the city is like 19 FPS if you're lucky, it can be kind of a mess. So you might be able to bring up some individual settings, kind of like I do the textures at medium, but for the most part, just no handheld I've tested, including the Legion Go, can handle this game just straight up the medium preset. So going back to our low with medium textures, dynamic scaling 66%, and 6 gigs of VRAM is what I have this thing set to. We'll take a look at some more performance as we move around here, but it's very hard to keep this thing to stay well above 30 if you're running your device at 1200p. You're really gonna have to change it to 800p so the game goes to more like 720, and we'll take a look at that too, and that'll help you with performance. You can see here how rough it is to run even with these settings that way. Now you can change your dynamic scaling to 50 or 33% and raise this up a bit more, but the game does look pretty rough even on that screen because we are 8.8 inch on the Legion Go, and you can definitely see when it starts to do that much scaling from such a lower resolution. But you can do that and adjust that farther if you want to and raise the FPS a bit more at this resolution and be able to play it a little bit better than what we have here. So let's go ahead and switch this over to 800p on the device. The game itself should be running 720. And in the same spot where we were like 28, 29 FPS, we're about 33, 34 FPS here with the same settings other than that. And it definitely runs better. This is the better chance we have at trying to stay 30 or above in the game running it this way. And for me, this looks better than running the higher resolution with more scaling, like say 33%. So for me on this is kind of the way I gotta go with it on the Legion Go in order to kind of keep it playable. You're still gonna run into all kinds of frame rate dips and drops and stutters and things like that that are gonna happen, be it in battle or whether you're in towns or city areas or where you have more NPCs. And if you were to try to take this up to medium preset like we did at the higher resolution, it also just comes down below 30 quite often. So it can be pretty tough to run. Again, it's not that impressive of a PC port. It doesn't have FSR, in-game frame gen. Performance is just, I don't know, there's room for optimization and stuff here in my opinion. I've played games that look better than this one at much better performance, even newer titles. But I'm enjoying the game, and if you're playing it on a PC that can run it maxed out settings and keep most of the stutters away, it looks really good and plays well. But on these devices, it's definitely a bit of a struggle here, even with the 25 watts thrown at this thing, the lower resolution, the pretty much low settings. But of course, some areas of the game indoors and stuff are going to run better. But I just think that overall, this winds up being the settings that we got to go with. And hopefully we'll get some patches that can clean things up. And I'd love to see them add like FSR and in-game frame gen, XeSS, and all that kind of stuff to the game as well, because it would help us run it better on a bunch of different devices. But anyways, let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of other things real quick. So we had an update for the Legion Go GPU. I covered this in a video a couple of days ago if you want to go take a look, but it added AMD Fluid Motion Frames 2 to the Legion Go with the official driver. So you can kick those on, which you can see me do here, and use AMD's Fluid Motion Frames now on this portrait display officially, no side-loaded drivers or anything like that. But it's pretty janky on this display, and I haven't really gotten it to feel very good or worth kicking in or playing, even on Final Fantasy VII, jumping over here, you know, in this spot around 36, 35. I'm going to kick it on, and it does good as far as not killing our base FPS. It doesn't eat our performance, but it's just stuttery. It just doesn't look good or feel good to play. And I've tried a bunch of different games and just never really liked it, even on the side-loaded driver. Never really liked the Fluid Motion Frames that much. And even if I lock 30 FPS, it's really not any better. Now, what does seem to work pretty good on this display for me, though, is the newly updated lossless scaling. That actually runs pretty well. So let's take a look at that here. We're just kind of moving around without it on. I'm going to go in here, and we're going to go ahead and hit our scaling button for lossless scaling. I have a full video on this as well that we just did recently here on the channel, but I'm going to turn that on. It's going to scale the game. We are going to lose some performance. We're going to go from 39 to 34 FPS, but it's going to then double that and bring us up. And this, unlike AFMF2, actually runs well. It actually doesn't have too much stutter. Input lag feels pretty good. The newest update for lossless scaling is actually pretty impressive. And if I lock the game to 30 FPS, except for areas where we're going to dip a little bit because it's just what the game wants to do, even if you have a little overhead, it's a pretty good feeling 60 FPS. It looks smooth on the screen, feels great. Input latency isn't too bad, and overall pretty happy with it. So for me, these settings, along with lossless scaling, which is a paid app in Steam, works really well and stays pretty nice. Even in combat and gameplay and stuff, input latency and everything isn't really too bad here for this. I know a lot of you guys are familiar with lossless scaling and how good it's been getting, but it's definitely better than Fluid Motion Frames for me on this device for sure. So anyways, guys, that's the performance we're looking at for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth here on the Legion Go, and really on any handheld. It's just been really rough to run. So anyways, guys, thanks a lot for coming and check out the video. As always, I really appreciate it, and I'll see you guys in the next one.